With the festive season in full swing, many South African households are feeling the squeeze from rising prices on imported goods, fuel and everyday essentials. Well, to help us understand how tariffs affect prices and household budgets, we're joined by Economist Sthandiwe Msomi. Sthandiwe, a very good afternoon to you and thank you so much for your time. So South African households are already under strain as we know it. I mean, with the high food inflation, fuel costs, etc., interest rates still elevated. Before we get into tariffs, how would you describe the overall financial health of households heading into this festive season? In fact, in this festive season?
Yeah, thank you so much for Nati for having me. I think I like the little excerpt that played before this interview of a woman in America who also is lamenting the increase in prices for food. And if that is actually happening in the United States, I can only imagine how we on the receiving end of Donald Trump's US tariffs are feeling in normal South African households. The truth is South Africa is tiered, let's say, sort of under three levels. You have your high income earners, those who have assets to sort of serve as a buffer in times like these. Then you have the middle class who are normally highly indebted, whether it's through credit cards or loans, but have some sort of access to the financial markets and through banks. And then you have low income earners who really are the everyday worker who lives from hand to mouth and sort of takes on the hit that the high income earners and middle income earners are feeling. And so right now, I think as we come into the festive season, a lot of households, especially low-income households, are battling with high prices, not only high prices for fuel, but the fuel prices that we're seeing that are increasing take a knock-on effect on ordinary workers who are the ones who face the high costs of bread and milk and the everyday goods, high taxi fares and transport to move around. And that eats away into the budget that one might have or would want to have rather for the festive season. And a big issue that I think households are confronted with now is what other sorts of financing are available. So if you are middle income, you'll probably look at maybe a loan, but the low income earners are the ones who'd probably look for microfinance, whether it be through a loan shark or other alternative and formal means, which also serves as a looming danger about the dangers also that go into dipping into those informalized sources of extra income during the festive season to try and weather the storm that comes with the festive season.
You're right, actually. In that earlier report, we also highlighted just how, the festive season is costing many Americans too much more this year as the effects of President Trump's tariffs start to bite. As we get into understanding the impact of those tariffs more, especially in South Africa, which categories of goods commonly, purchased during the festive season, such as electronics, clothing, toys, most affected by tariffs?
Yeah, so a lot of industries quite broadly are affected by tariffs, but I think the more immediate ones, such as food and fuel and clothes and electronics, sort of serve as the after effects of some of the bigger sectors in our country that have been affected by tariffs. So as you've said earlier, around April, Donald Trump imposed tariffs at a rate of 25 to 30% on all South African goods that are exported to the United States, and that heavily impacted industries such as the automobile sector, the manufacturing sector, that all export sort of products either in their intermediate phase or as finished goods into the United States. And the United States serves as a big trading partner for South Africa. And so with those industries impacted, that also has a knock-on effect on the ordinary workers who work in automobile factories, whether it be in the Eastern Cape, which is a huge sort of economic zone for automobile manufacturing. And that too has a ripple effect on those ordinary workers who have to go back home and face the brunt of job losses, right? But I think also more broadly, another impact of tariffs is that as soon as there's a high tariff environment, an economy like South Africa, which is a relatively small economy, faces a huge knock-on effect on its currency, right? And so you saw that after the tariff tariff hike, there was a sort of increase in sort of the rather currency depreciation, and that sort of currency uncertainty creates a huge impact on even us in South Africa and those who import goods from other parts of the world, for different industries that sort of take on sort of other imported goods and use it in our own domestic manufacturing processes, right? And so all of those ripple effects ultimately trickle down to the ordinary user. So even when it comes down to things like electronics, right, those are goods that we often import a lot from other countries such as China and a lot of the tech manufacturing hubs that are more sophisticated and have a comparative advantage in that sector.
Yeah.
And so because of the fact that tariffs cause a currency depreciation, it becomes even more expensive for domestic firms to go out into the market and actually buy foreign goods because of the fact that it now just takes more South African rands to import an electronic toy, or even import some of the food that we use that we don't grow locally. And ultimately that burden often gets passed on to the consumer, who now has to contend with small purchasing power because of the knock-on effect of tariffs.
And just on that note, and as we wrap up, I mean, just given the reality of these tariffs and the rising prices and the picture that you paint, I mean, what are the practical then steps or advice would you give households, trying to manage this festive spending without obviously following into the January debt or dry January? Because, I mean, as you say, we've also seen a lot of data showing that people are relying on credit, to fund their spending.
Yeah. It is actually important that people be quite cautious in the festive season, particularly because, I mean, just a few months ago, the Monetary Policy Council or Committee did decrease the repo rate by, I think, 0.25 basis points, which also sort of fits the atmosphere that we're trying to create of sort of not making a high inflationary environment, but also taking the burden off of consumers at this point in time. But normally a decrease in the interest rate in a few months' time builds up to another increase in the interest rates. And so for those middle class earners who do have access to some sort of credit, they should definitely be vigilant for those looming interest rate hikes that we'll see, given the fact that we just went through a decrease this year. And so though the spending might sound and look like it's something that's permissible now, in the future or in a few months down the line, it might be something that one comes to regret. And so it's important to really have a cap on the amount of money that you want to spend this festive season, and look for local options as well that are much more cheaper to sort of create the entertainment that you might want to look for, and really be quite vigilant in even comparing prices between different retailers, because the festive season comes and goes, but the new year and the expenses that it ushers in really comes in full circle. And going into the new economic year next year, we will have to sort of create some buffers for the long-term impact of these tariffs. And so I definitely think that households should trade with caution and have fun within the means that their budget allows.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for your insights, Sthandiwe. Really do appreciate it. That is Economist Sthandiwe Msomi.